our speakers for today.
Our program today is one that we've talked about for quite a while, and we wonder if we could get this scheduled, and it's actually happened. And with us today is Willis Brown and Kenneth Dilda, both of the Mount Olive area. And Willis is, of course, you've probably read your footnotes, and that's all the information I have because I just met him 3 minutes, 22 seconds. I did talk to Kenneth a little bit earlier. Kenneth and I got kind of parallel minds. We both try to preserve the past for the future generations. And along with Joanne, we know that's a pretty tough assignment. But Willis, and maybe he'll share some of this with you, a former biology professor turned photographer. That's interesting.
Yes, it is.
But anyway, we're thankful to be all that the photographs of the Kraft Studios didn't wind up in a burn pile somewhere. And I understand also that if you have a lot of photographs, you don't know who they are, you'd like some help identifying them. So, as you see these today, and I guess Willis will share this with you, if you can identify anybody in these photographs, certainly let him know who they are. And I talked to Ken earlier, if our time doesn't permit both of them to do today, then we'll reschedule Ken at a different date, and he can have the whole program. So, Ken he's the curator of the David John Barron Museum in Mount Olive. And it's quite an interesting place to visit. If you haven't been, I encourage you to go. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Willis and Kenneth as you choose to do.
Thank you very much. And I need to apologize for laughing so hard about that description of your position with this group. It's very similar to ours, especially without the pay part of that. And our meetings like this are just like yours. You don't stand up at that time. You don't raise your hand. You don't have to go to the bathroom right then, or you will be elected. And you have the privilege of serving. But thank y'all so much for inviting us. I accidentally met Sonny one day in the newspaper, and after I informed him of who I was, this gleam came in his eye, and I thought, uh-oh, something's about to happen. And when he told me what it was, I said, we would be glad to come speak to your group. Because I have had the privilege of working with Charles Kraft at his studio since 1970, 71, and we live 2 doors down from him. And we miss him tremendously. He was one of the most talented photographers I have ever known. And we have thoroughly enjoyed going through a lot of these photographs. As you'll see from some of the locations I'll show you, we were very glad to get these photographs into a slightly better location, but not tremendously. But we enjoy that a lot. And again, we really thank you for inviting us. 2 Sundays ago, I was at Bear Marsh Church. And it's rare that you find a church that's older than the Declaration of Independence. And it was very interesting there. And it was there that one of the representatives from the Southern North Carolina Baptist Convention spoke. And he told the story of him growing up in a rural area. I think he was from the Western Piedmont or something like that. But they had revivals at their churches. And they usually got the person to conduct the revival that could speak the longest. If they were going to feed that man, you got paid by the word at that time, I think. So they were walking through one of the revival services, I think it may have been Sunday morning, and all of a sudden this man, right on the second row, gets up and leaves. And a considerable amount of time later, he came right back into the service and sat right back down. And as the people were leaving at the end of the service, the man walked by the minister and congratulated the minister on being there. And the minister said, well, Mr. Jones, said, I noticed you had to leave. I hope there was nothing wrong. He says, no, I had to get a haircut. And he said, well, Mr. Jones, couldn't you have gotten a haircut before I started preaching? And Mr. Jones said, well, before you started preaching, I didn't need a haircut. And the bad thing about it for me was that two of my former students sitting in the church, they turned around and looked right at me. I said, what in the world? Maybe they were just curious as to the equipment I was using or something. So hopefully, and no, I have no idea where there's a barber in Louisville, so I will not tell you what that is about. So, but that was very interesting, and it was a very interesting service. Some of you know Austin House. He had a printed version of the history of Barry Marsh Church. I got to stay for the morning service. He finished that in the afternoon, but if you get a chance to read that, I don't know, it may be an excellent article for that. It was very interesting. And so they have a very interesting congregation, a very old and history group there. Here's what I hope we will get to today. Now, I'll have to tell you, I come to this position by accident, simply because I'm a photographer. I know very little about history. And Ken has been such a dear friend for the longest time. I would like to wish you good luck in telling him no once he asks you to do something. And that treasurer's report was a gem. I would love to hear a treasurer's report like that in our group eventually. We have good goals with that, so that's great. So Ken has started this many years. He'll tell you about the Mount Olive Area Historical Society, because our photographic collection has been acquired under the direction of the Historical Society. And it has been housed in the David John Aaron Museum, and that's how our Kraft photograph selection comes to be and is stored. So Ken will tell you a little bit about what is above our collection and the administration of those photographs and what we're doing with them. And then he and I both will tell you, and I'll show you a few of the functions of our museum committee, and then I'll get into the description of the photo files. And if we can schedule about 20 more sessions with you, we can show you representatives of that file, of those files. And I'll show you samples of those, and then we'll talk a little bit about what goals we've got, what we've done in the past. We've given these together before, and I sort of jokingly said, somebody told us we were a dog and pony show with this. And then somebody after said, no, you remind me more of an organ grinder and a monkey. That day I was the monkey. We tried to take turns being each. So here's the organ grinder. Ken will tell you about what this is.
I've always been the monkey, Willis. I'll continue to be your monkey as long as you will do these high-tech presentations. Well, it is good to be with you, and in the midst of many people I have grown near and dear to over the years, so I'll be very careful and be very brief. I've always thought there should be a beatitude added to the original, and that is, blessed are the brief, for they shall be invited back. And especially, Willis, as you do the major program. I'm also humbled by what Abe Lincoln said at Gettysburg. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, and I just have always found that a challenge as we have done this kind of work over the years. Just, Willis is going to do the major program. I'll just introduce the Historical Society a bit, which is the caretaker and the purchaser of the Kraft Collection. We came into being in 1997 as a result of a letter from a concerned citizen in Mount Olive to the mayor, followed up with a committee, met for an entire year. Finally, in November 1997, we organized. Our first item of business was a motion to have the Wayne County Board of Education delay the demolition of the old high school. Contract had already been signed. That building was about to come down. And just fortunately, we were able to intervene, and today now the college uses the building for housing and the auditorium. So we had just a rush of a start, and quite a successful one, which always is not the case with preservation. In '98, we began work on our historic district, and that came to fruition in '99 when we got listed on the National Register. We followed that up with a brochure, which we have available for walking tours and car tours of the Mount Olive Historic District. 2000, we began seeking a place for a museum, and we were going to use the old steel library, and we were told by a consultant from Raleigh that there's too much moisture in the basement of that. So fortunately, the Long family came along and offered us a lease on the house that we use now for our museum. So that project started in 2001, and we finished it in 2007 and opened during the Pickle Festival. And had a little money left over, and fortunately had the offer to purchase the Kraft Collection in 2009, and so it's been in our possession, and we have a challenge ahead of us to get that in more manageable order. So I've been brief, and I'm going to be seated, and may you do the same with us.
Yeah, that's the brief history of us getting this collection. It has been a project for a long time for us to do that. In fact, I think the discussion began with Charles even before he retired, and so we've gotten that. Here is the David John Aaron Museum, and it is in the upstairs of that building that the photographs is where they are stored. And I'll show you a little bit about that later. This is the hall that you enter in. That was the first day, I guess, as we were finishing it for the opening of that hall. And here's what it was before we got to it. And I think that had even been cleaned up a little bit at that stage.
What street?
It's on Main Street. You know where Southern Bank is? It's right next door to Southern Bank right there. Right behind it, really, where the Times Emperor sign is. And there were many scenes like that in there. A few functions of our committee. One of the things is a holiday celebration. Mrs. Santa reads to the children, and then Santa, he is a Duplin County helper for Santa. Some of you may know Mark Best, and he is an excellent Santa Claus and is still doing that. And then there are activities for the children. The what?
Works at brother-in-law?
Yes, right. Yeah. Beautiful beard. So there are activities for the children, and they thoroughly enjoy that. And it's the Friday night before the Christmas parade. This year it's December the 6th. And then another activity, we had an antiques appraisal. And I guess you call the original Gene Autry, Rudolph Render as antique. I think he was in favor of that, and I think he tried to keep it. I'm not sure I ever got that back. And the sword there, that was of great interest too. So we had that was a very interesting day. I did not go, we've had 3, right? And I got this last one, it was very good. We have started a project, it's really in its infancy. It originally titled A Day in the Life of Mount Olive, but it's not isolated to just a day. We gave out cameras to members of the community and just said, photograph anything you can that you think would be memorable in the community. As you can see, our community does include a lot of northern Duplin County. North Duplin High School, this was a beauty shop, barber beauty shop right downtown Mount Olive. In fact, you can see one of our committee members mirrored in the door right under the open sign there, taking those photographs. This was a especially significant team because one of their members died this year. Not this, I mean the year that we took that was a couple of years ago. And he was a very promising athlete, and then given scholarship to UNC Chapel Hill. And it was sudden, it just really was a sad day. As you can see, the photographs when taken by the community, well, taken by any of us, some of these are misty moments, and you can see that some of the photos, these were $9 cameras that we got, and so we handed them out, and we loved doing it. It was just great, and somebody took this. It was especially memorable because those of you who know the status of the Southern Belle restaurant in our community know that it was a shrine, and there was something that was very sad about the demise of that, but it's no longer there. The building's there, but this shows the motel that has since been torn down and the new hotel, the Sleep Inn that is there. We also had several Civil War recreation events. Those went well, and some of you, I'm sure you know Kerry Turner, and he participates in that well. Now, the files themselves, as I mentioned, they are upstairs. In fact, the view you're about to see will be this room that is right up here. Now, that room has been, I guess, placed as well as could be placed to get those files that we've got now. The windows have been boarded up, so there's very little light there. And those of you that know about photography, you really would like to keep moisture and light away from those photographs. Now, in the Kraft Studio that you're about to see in a minute, that didn't happen. I guess when that began, the attic of that studio was about as moist as a spa at times. And so you'll see that it really wasn't good for the preservation of photographs. But through all that area, there have been many, surprisingly many of those that have been well preserved. So you'll see that. Now here's a picture of the files that exist in that room. And that's just one of the walls. Here's another one. It was impossible to show you all of those that are in there. But several people have suggested there are as many as 500,000 negatives files in that collection. Now, that means that Charles would take several poses of the same thing, make sure your eyes were closed and stuff. That includes those, but still, that's an enormous amount of photographs to be housed in one place like that. These are chronologically filed. As you can see here, this is 1945 through 47. And there are photographs in this collection from the early 1900s, the late 1800s, a few. Wow. Now, there are several of those that Charles gathered that he didn't take. You'll see in just a minute, there are 3 more photographers that are recorded there in Mount Olive. We knew of a couple of them, but the third one we really didn't know about. Here's the envelopes that are there. And even though they're chronologically filed, they're in alphabetical order in each of those drawers. But what a person that still works, Brenda Baldwin, still works there. She painted oil portraits for the Krafts, and she said that one of the things that they would do, as soon as they were called to get a reprint, they would take that file out of the original chronologically oriented file and wouldn't ever put it back in there. And she couldn't remember exactly where it was put. Now, we found a couple of those in boxes that are just, the filing system in those boxes is random. And it's been very lucky that we found a couple of them when people asked for these. So that'll give you an idea of the job we've got to get a lot of these files put back into order. We got the photographs, but we didn't get the records of those. You'll see some of the community photographs, the firemen, the places like that. A lot of these don't have names on them. If they do, they've been scribbled on the back of them, so we've got those. Those of you who know him recognize Charles. That permanent smile always on his face, regardless of how he felt about anything, he was smiling. Frances, his wife, was just as important as he was in that business. For the longest time, she painted all the oils. She would arrange the brides. She would pose for those beautiful photographs, pose the subjects for those photographs. And they were about as much fun out of that studio as they were in it. They helped raise our children, and you'll see that. Now, here's the studio building. The photographs were housed in this attic, and here and above. After their son, Rick, took over the studio, he acquired one of these rooms for a portrait studio, so it moved a lot of those files not only into the other part of the attic, but downstairs in a room that was really worse for these photographs than the ones up there. So they have been moved into that building where the museum is now. Charles, after retirement, helped us to organize a lot of the photographs in the Rotary collection there. The Rotary Club was very active, and it probably has the best records of any of the civic clubs there in Mount Olive, I think. If I'm not mistaken, Charles helped with that a whole lot in filing those. The other photographs, one is Claude Brown. I don't think any relationship to me, but he is related to our current president of the Historical Society. I think Claude was her uncle, and she has a lot of photographs taken by him. There are a couple of those in the collection, and we're trying to get more of those from his niece. And then a George Newell. Have any of you ever run across a George Newell? That's the only one that I have, that I think we have in our collection so far. Now, with the, I'll tell you a little bit more about the label in just a minute. And then there's a Mr. Reichenbach, whose photographs appear, I don't know where they are. I mean, people sort of say they've heard about him, but there are several Reichenbachs in and around Mount Olive. And the Reichenbachs I've asked don't remember any of their relatives being photographed. So there's a real good book in the historical collection in the Museum of History that lists photographers in North Carolina. Claude Brown appears in there, and Charles Kraft appears in there. But they're the only two that I know of that do that. How do we process those negatives? Well, when we got them, we had no idea what to do with them. And we heard that the East Carolina Library had acquired the Greenville Daily Reflector collection of all their negatives. So we called, and sure enough they had. They graciously invited us over to view their collection and to tell us how they processed their negatives and their photographs. So we had a lot of help from East Carolina from that collection. So we gathered, and one of the first things we did was to try to get those photographs all out of the old files, the old envelopes, and put into archivally, or at least envelopes that are better suited archivally. We still don't have them into final archival conditions, and we're trying to work on that. But we're working on filing those negatives, and we get them out, try to find out who they are, try to find the condition of the negative, and there are several groups that work on these. This is one of the groups of the museum. Gary Barefoot, who's the retired librarian at the college, and I work on some together, and so we're constantly looking into files for those. We have several methods of processing these. One is to scan them. This is a baseball team from Warsaw. There are a couple of people in there from Mount Olive, because Charles will photograph you wherever you go. So if you were participating in baseball in one area, he'd go photograph you. I know he's had weddings all the way from Sanford to the other side of Greenville, and several of you in here have already mentioned he's photographed you and your children. So he would go far and wide, and we've had this in a couple of the newspapers. I'll talk about that in just a minute. But that has helped us enormously. We have photographed a lot of the photographs. If they're large, too large to get on our scanner, we photograph them. The DSC number is the digital number that goes with the photographing these. With scanning them, the scans are put on there by date. So that's October the 15th, 2011. So if you see these in the newspaper, at least you can tell either what the DSC number is for our file number or the date that these were filed. And we have that also. So we've got all those. Many of these have been donated to us. We not only have one from Charles Kraft, Lloyd Warren, who was very active in the town of Mount Olive. His grandfather was one of the persons that was the first station master at this station, Calypso. So we get a lot of those and copy them, give them right back to them. So if you got photographs like that. Now, I tried to choose some of these, the samples of these, that would be meaningful to you, because a lot of these are from the Mason area. And they are agriculturally oriented, and you can see that. And you may recognize some of the people that are there. That is the family of, you may know Dr. James Lambert in Mount Olive. This is his father. This was one of the first photographs we ever put in one of the newspapers. And they didn't know that photograph existed. He was on his way out at that time. And I think Rodney Lambert, who you may know, I'm sure, is in that photograph also. You'll see what those are. This was a very interesting photograph. We put it in one of the newspapers at one time and didn't get any reply whatsoever for about 2 months. And finally, this little boy is a Mr. Kelly. His name is Bill Kelly. He lives in Kinston. Somebody has shown him that Southern Baptist country, anyway, celebrated the arrival of this book. And apparently one of the library buildings is named after her.
Yes, county library.
County library. So that was a very interesting photograph that you see there. This was also in, we had all kind of guesses for this. Apparently the architecture of that building is similar to the community building in Goldsboro. The old main building on the Mount Olive College campus. And as it turns out, the person who finally identified it correctly as the courthouse in Kenansville, the county courthouse. Does that make sense? He said this was the Saturday night dance that was being held there every Saturday night. And he identified the man doing the calling, the band behind there. The condition of the photograph, as you can tell, was very poor because those dark areas don't exist in that, or the photograph doesn't exist in those dark areas. But supposedly there's a man from Mount Olive, that's the first one over here on the left, Mr. Wilbert Martin. And I talked with his son, Tony Martin, and he said, try to find a photograph of this to tell whether that was it or not. This apparently was a very common scene in the days of the fruit and vegetable market. I really didn't know there was, I thought there was only one produce market in Faison, but no, apparently there have been 3 at least that have been there. And that's been interesting. And this is the sale day of the produce market there, back in the 40s.
The what?
And lately we've run across these. These are the late teens, early 20s in Faison. This was supposedly 1922, but as we found from a couple of people phoning in, it could be anywhere between 1920 and 1924. That building, that is right on the corner where the PNC Bank is now, and the fire station.
That was Bank of Faison.
That was the Bank of Faison. So, yeah. So they bring them there, and the railroad tracks are right here, and they load them up and send them away. So,
The railroad tracks are right in the foreground.
yeah, yeah. Where we're standing. That's some interest. There are about 6 of those photographs that are on double sheets of old paper there. We've used these so far for a lot of things, publicizing our historical society. We've also had requests for the photographs themselves, and we've had requests for photographs that we don't know whether they are there or not. Some of them can give us some of the requestors can give us good dates, and we found them within those dates. They've been great. One of the things that you'll see, and I guess a lot of you know L.S. Guy and Barbara, and their daughter came to see us and said they had never had wedding pictures. Charles took them. They didn't have enough money. No one had those. They couldn't get them whatsoever. Did we have them? Well, luckily, they were still on the same date. And so if you want to come, I asked L.S. and Barbara if they minded if I showed these to people. They said no. They boo-hooed when their daughters showed up at their 50th wedding anniversary with this collection of photographs. So we've had a couple of requests like that. I'll leave these out up here. And if you're curious about that, you should show or can look at these. And we've had several people bring in yearbooks. We've had, this is the 1955 Calypso High School. And now that became eventually North Duplin. And they remember a very dear friend of mine, that was all of ours, Will Martin, who taught science in that school, and Mr. Grubbs, who was principal there. And if you're familiar with those, you'll see that. She brought in her photographs of her 3rd and 4th grade classes. So we've been getting good publicity and getting a lot of contributions to people about that. So you can see those things. We've had wonderful donations. Ken mentioned Andy's corporation. There have been a lot of contributions from too many people to mention. If I start mentioning them, I'll forget several, but they've been just wonderful. That this has helped a whole lot. As I mentioned, family histories. Some people have bought these for wall art is a lot of function given our group for recording the future of our area. Now, you know about this as well, if not more so than I do, the opportunities of things that are changing in our area. Just drive down the connector from Mount Olive to I-40 and all those grapes, the arbors on that side. That is a huge business now. Vineyards, wineries, the Duplin Winery has been leader in that for the longest time. The demand for high-quality protein that's being supplied by the pork and the turkey, chicken industries in our area, that probably can't move anywhere but up technologically. The technology of these is increasing faster than we can keep up with. So you'll see a lot of that being recorded. The changes in education. Now, we were just talking about the 25th anniversary, or the 50th anniversary, of James Blunt Community College. The changes that are occurring there is amazing. Our educational institutions are changing drastically. We've just read in the last week or two about Mount Olive College thinking about changing its name to a university, offering graduate school courses, things like that there. So you'll see a lot of that is in the making. It's wide open for us. So thanks to you very much for inviting us, letting us at least show you the introduction to this venture of ours. We'd love to come back. We'd love to hear your contributions, advice, and things like that. And now's the question period. Now, usually it's a question period from you to us. We've got lots of questions that we want to ask you at this point. How do you do what you do? How'd you get all that money? That's never a topic, is it? When you get together, it's a trait. How are we going to afford doing this? How do you affix labels in your museums? We are having the most trouble without. Now, you saw that the hall that was there. We had the chairperson of the art department at the college come in and do a wonderful job of actually applying letters to the wall. Well, we have called on him so many times, he sees us coming and he leaves. He won't speak to us anymore. And so we've used up that resource. So we probably have to leave him alone for a while, but we plan to get back. We're having trouble. We've used rubber cement. They fall off the wall and they leave scars on the wall. We've tried little framed note card size frames, and that takes up so much space that we could be using photographs. But if you can give us any advice on how to conduct our museum, please come see us. We'd love to do that.
Okay.
Seriously, you may have some questions or comments or identification.
How do you get a print, and do you sell prints?
We do.
You do. What's your prices for all the size and everything?
We sell the 8 by 10s are $70, and it's on either side of that. It goes down about 10 or 15 per size. So I guess the 5 by 7s would be 55, something like that, and up. So we're trying to get money. Somebody said you need to put all these online. That's our long range goal.
Yeah.
We've had an estimate of putting these online securely for about $10,000. And I don't think that person said that's probably putting about 10,000 photographs online.
Wow. Have you talked with Archives and History about
Yes, they've been very helpful with this and how to do it and archival stuff. One of our graduates was in charge of one of the divisions there, and he was enormously close in touch. There's a department there. One of the guys retired, but they came down to lecture at the event those were, and so they told us what to do.
Would you consider letting Archives and History make copies, or?
Oh, sure.
Or are you shifting those to Archives and let them make copies for you, or is that out of the question?
No, that wouldn't be out of the question at all. That would be a good suggestion.
Because we send some things to Archives, and you can get copies there for nothing.
Yeah. Well, the main reason we're charging for those is trying to get our website up and going. And that's one of the few ways we have to make money for that collection.
Are you creating an index to these photographs?
Yes.
Based
By
on-
those DSC numbers and scan numbers.
You're doing it by just, there's no chronological order to this, or is it?
There is.
There was, but it's been.
We're doing a spreadsheet of these. So in there, there is as soon as they identify the time period,